Hello, and welcome to Conversations Worth Your While, a show in which I chat with really cool people about interesting topics to spark, inspire, and motivate personal and professional change. And today's topic is the secret to authentically achieving your goals. And I'm going to emphasize authentically. And this conversation is worth your while if you'd love to achieve your goals with less effort by aligning your goals and actions with who you are and where you're at. And what we're going to cover today is why achieving the goals you set is often way harder than you thought it was going to be. And we're also going to share with you the secret to authentically achieving your goals. And so let's start with some intros. I am Linda Bucher. I'm a heart-centered master coach and a mindset mentor, a transformative speaker, and an author. And if you're excited about making a positive impact on the world, but you're not exactly sure how to go about it, or if you feel that there's this bigness inside of you that you know you're meant to share, but you're not sure how to define it or wrangle it or harness it in a way that matters to the world. And if you want to do more and be more and have more joy, more fun, more balance, and more impact, but you recognize that you've got to lighten your load to make room for it, then you're going to want to connect with me to unleash the bigness inside of you so you can make an impact and live a balanced, rewarding life. So my gift is lighting the way for those who are meant to be lighting the way for others. And that's a little bit about me. And today I have the pleasure of being joined by Amy Hartl of As We Are Now, who teaches women to use self-care strategically to heal mentally, emotionally, and physically after breast cancer. Hi, Amy, welcome.
Hi, Linda. Thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, you're very welcome. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about what you do and who you serve and why this topic is worth your while to speak with us about today?
Sure, happy to. So I grew up at high risk for breast cancer. My family has a long history of breast and ovarian cancers. I have a known genetic mutation called the BRCA1 gene mutation. And because of this, I have long been affected by breast cancer. And that's where my interest began in working with other women like myself who either were dealing with the potential or an actual diagnosis and history of breast cancer. I've been a practicing oncology massage and lymphatic drainage therapist for 10 years. And ultimately, I did go through my own breast cancer diagnosis and treatment in 2017. So this is my 5-year milestone year. And along the way, I realized that because of my professional experience, I was able to navigate both treatment and especially recovery and survivorship with a unique set of skills and information and education that really helped me play an active role and in my own, in my own healing journey. And over the last couple of years, I've just really discovered how important that is. And so that is why I created As We Are Now, to help women like me use self-care strategically so that they can play an active role in their recovery and in their healing beyond having to always rely on others like their medical team.
That's beautiful. I love that actively play a part, because it really is disempowering, giving, when you feel like you don't have any power. Well, even you don't feel like you have any power, obviously. Kind of taking charge of it. And that really aligns with our conversation today, which is about achieving goals. And the goals that your clients are trying to achieve is different than the goals my clients are trying to achieve. Yet, what we discovered when we talked, the two of us, is that there's so much in common. The process is almost identical. It's amazing. So today we're going to talk about why achieving the goals that we set is often way harder than we think it's going to be. And then the second thing we'll cover is the actual secret to authentically achieving those goals. So let's let's start with okay, we set these goals and we're like, oh, I'm going to totally achieve this. And in your case, it's usually probably some type of a self-care, self-empowerment type goal. Tell us a little bit more about the goals and why they're not always so achievable.
Sure. Well, in the case of my clients, breast cancer is life altering, and it's not just a physical experience, it's a mental and emotional one as well. And many people think that when active treatment and surgeries are done, that we just achieve this new normal. It's like we wake up, yay, we're done, been through it, rang the bell. And now it's time to go on with life. And so many women find that it's just not that easy. They are physically changed. Recovery takes longer than they expected. They have this kind of perception of where they think they're supposed to be, and it just can be so heavy and so overwhelming. And that's one of the biggest things that I find, is that people's expectations aren't aligned with their actual healing and where they're at.
Mm.
And that right there sets a foundation for not being able to move forward with achievable goals.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. So, the goals, we're not achieving these goals because they're not in alignment with who we are or where we're at right now, which is what you're saying. These expectations, we set these expectations that sometimes it's like how we think we're supposed to feel, after. So like, my clients aren't necessarily patients. I've had breast cancer survivors as clients for sure, but that's not why they came to me. They came to me for like, what's next and how do I get to it? Because I gotta do stuff. I have important shit to share with the world, right? So, but the same thing is we get caught up in the expectations. I should be here by now. I should feel like this, but I don't, and sometimes we're taking on other people's expectations. Like, well, you're healed. You should, or like, I'm a widow technically, although I don't really identify with that, like you should feel like this by now. You should, like people, have the expectations, and it's really easy to take on their expectations as their own as well. And sometimes it's not so easy. And especially if those expectations aren't aligning with who we are now, because when we go through a big change, a big transition in life, whether it's breast cancer, a move to a new city, a job change, empty nest, having a baby, getting married, getting divorced, becoming a widow, all of those changes that I help clients through. Doesn't matter what the change is, who your identity gets sucked out from underneath you as soon as you get thrown into that change. And you've got to discover throughout the process of healing, who am I now and what's important to me now? And what's interesting is things come to light that maybe didn't come to light before. Things that you could care less about before are of huge value to you now. So we have to align with our values, right? And our, what's important to us now, given this change that we've been put through. So those are a couple of reasons. Another thing is, we don't tend to prioritize or make things small enough, right? We're trying to like do it all.
Absolutely. And that's a huge challenge when it comes to my client base, is that, you go through, and as I said, it's physical, it's mental, emotional, it could be something like wanting to get back to an activity that you love, like going to the gym, or feeling, strong enough to clean the house, or pick up your kids again after surgery, or whatever it might be. And often there's this idea of wanting to get back, like you said, to where you were. Maybe with my client base, they want to be the way it was, instead of acknowledging where they are at, or where they are now, and then how they get there going forward. And so they try to do all the things. They look at all the areas of their life that have been impacted, and they think, I have to fix it all right now so that I can feel normal again. I can feel like myself again. And when you fail to prioritize and set an order, or take little actions at one time and try to do everything at once, you're setting yourself up for failure. You're totally setting yourself up to not make progress in any area. Because it's just too much, and it becomes emotionally and mentally overwhelming, as well as physically.
Right. And another thing that adds to that, which stops us, it makes our trying to achieve these goals so much harder than it needs to be, is having the belief that we have to do it all, that we have to fix it all, that we have to put it all back the way it was. That is just a belief. Like, in order for, we might be carrying around guilt because maybe in taking care of our own self through our own transitions, we haven't been able to give as much to other people that we were used to doing. So then we have this guilt. So we want to overdo it. And we believe that we have to take care of these other people and get them back to normal as well, which is actually not our responsibility or within our control. So we have beliefs
Correct.
that are always getting in the way, that are making us contribute to frustration and overwhelm. Why can't I get back to where I was? And part of it is because we're taking on things that don't even belong to us, or things that are unnecessary, that are based on a belief that's causing a feeling like guilt, right? So
Absolutely.
there's so much more. We could dive in for a long time, but I would love to move on. You'd love to move on. So we promised everybody we would talk about the secret to authentically achieving your goals. And we came up with 3 areas underneath this, and we'll talk about each area. So the first area, the first secret, is to set goals that are more likely to be realized because they are specific, achievable, in alignment with what's important to you, within your power, appealing to you, and relevant to your specific needs. So what would you like to share in light of that?
No, absolutely. I think, so I'm a self-care strategist, and so I help women identify ways to use self-care, to aid in their own recovery and healing. And the problem is self-care is a huge buzz phrase right now. And everybody uses that term and they think about it, and it can all be so generic. And, not everybody, one of the things I encourage people to think about when, say, setting a goal, maybe it's getting back to the gym and working with something, and like lifting weights again, is you have to think about what you like and don't like. You have to think about what's relevant to you in your life. If you've never been a gym person before, that doesn't have to be a part of your self-care and your healing and your recovery. If you are a gym person, soaking in a bubble bath may or may not be something that accompanies that. Like, there's so many, going to pedicures, like, self-care can be luxurious, but so often it's generic. And that's the main problem. And people don't stop to think about, who are they? What activities do they like? What don't they like? Because those can just get tossed out and not take up any more room or thought, time and energy. And how do you, take into account your values? How do your values and the way you live your life play into who you are, and make that a part of your goal setting, right? What's relevant to you, your specific needs, your specific goals, and how are you going to get there?
Yes, exactly. And also, when we talk about what's in alignment with what's important to you, beyond goals or beyond your values, is your priorities and your budget. That's really big. And it's not something to feel guilty about if you don't have the budget. It's more to say, let's be honest and truthful with ourselves. Here's what's important to me. Here's what I'm going to prioritize and put first. And here's the budget in order to make that happen, that I'm dealing with right now, this week or this month. This is the budget I have today, right? So I know a lot of people, they offer all this stuff, like, oh, buy this, coach with me, coach. And you and I, we're not like that. We want to take into a value. It's a true realistic. It's part of being realistic, right? What
absolutely.
Is
Yeah, absolutely. For my clients, budget does come into play. Cancer is an expensive experience, and it has ongoing ramifications. And, there are people out there who are able to spend where money is not a concern, and they can put that into their healing. But I always try to help people realize that there's no shame in looking at your budget. And a lot of that can come in prioritization. It's the same with time and energy. It might be that there's one area of your life that you really need to go all in on first before you can start. That's that prioritization piece. Like, what's the first next thing? And for some people, they are able to spend all their time, energy, and money in one area, and that's what they're going to focus on. For others, they may need to just dabble. And that's where it's like, okay, well, then let's look at either some low cost options or some free options. How can you just get started in that process? And there is no right or wrong, because it's all about where you are, where you want to get to. And sometimes starting with the smaller, little introductory baby steps into an area with either free content or something that's just a way to try things out, like a trial or anything like that. It's going to get you a small, quick win that's actually going to make you feel more motivated to keep going. Yeah. So budget and time and energy. What do you have to spend? Not just financially, but energetically. What do you have to spend is something you have to take into consideration when you're setting a goal and creating an action plan to achieve it.
Right, exactly. And also to make sure that you're not overspending your time and energy. Sometimes in choosing a goal or choosing the step, right? I remember seeing this visual. It was fantastic. It was 2 ladders next to each other, very tall ladders to get up to the ledge. And one of the ladders had short, tiny steps, and the rungs were very close together. And the other ladder had big, tall ones. And then the little stick figure at the bottom couldn't reach the rung. So,
love that.
Right. So what size rungs do we need? And we're going to talk about that a little bit more, in just a few minutes. So, but also I wanted to talk about when you're setting your goal, and we said it's got to be specific, it's got to be achievable. Those little rungs make it achievable when you make them smaller, in alignment with your values, priorities, budget, time, energy. It has to appeal to you. You touched upon that. If a bubble bath doesn't appeal to you and a walk in the woods does, then walk in the woods is your way of doing self-care. But it has 2 more things. It needs to be relevant to what your specific needs are. So not just desires, but needs, right? So maybe elaborate on that for a minute.
Absolutely. And that's actually one of the most important parts, at least in my clientele. And I think it's true for anybody setting any goals, is you need to actually look at what you've been through, what your experience is. With my clients, breast cancer surgery and treatment have long-term physical effects, as well, of course, as mental and emotional. And so one of the things I educate people on is that almost every woman who goes through breast cancer has some level of developing a condition called lymphedema. And it's too complicated to go into here, but it's basically a chronic condition that causes swelling and pain, often in an arm or maybe along the side of the breast where the cancer was. And it's complex, and it's manageable, but not curable. And so learning how to understand that risk and take steps to reduce that risk is really important. Well, that's clearly a very specific need to a woman who's been through breast cancer, right? And but ignoring that need in favor of a bubble bath or something else that has nothing to do with it, it's important to actually understand the full breadth of what you've been through with something like one of these life-changing experiences, and then identify things that are relevant to your experience. So that's a very specific example of how someone who would come to me would want to identify there are self-care activities that are helpful. And there's actually self-care activities that some people wouldn't realize can actually, possibly create that problem. And so helping to learn about the do's, the don'ts, the how to make informed decisions is all part of that process.
Right. Learning is huge. And we'll talk about that at the end of our broadcast today as well. The final thing is that goals need to be within your power. That's something that I talk about a lot with people. If our goals require someone else or something else to change or do something, then it's not within our power, and we're going to sit back and it's going to make it really unachievable. So we have to make sure that we're doing what we can within our own power. So that's just a huge thing I just want to throw in at the end there. But I would like to move on to step 2, right? So the step 1 was setting goals in alignment with all those things we just talked about. Step 2 is really about making a plan. Now, I'm not a planner. I'm like a heart can be. I'm a fire ready aim kind of person, but there is such a giant benefit to making a plan. And one of the most important things to do when you're making a plan is to be sure that you're going to start where you are, that you're going to be realistic about where are you right now, realistic in terms of how much energy do I have, how much capacity do I have, how much time do I have to achieve my goal, regardless if the goal for your clients is, healing, mostly healing related. For my folks, the goal is healing as well, healing and getting rid of the obstacles to make capacity to be able to give their gifts to the world, to move forward with what's next, to discover and find their wow, etc. So starting where you are right now, right? Where can you go from here? Well, it's from here is the key. Where are you right now?
Absolutely. I often, I sometimes use the phrase like underestimate where you're at in this moment. So we could also call that be honest with where you're at in this moment. Overestimate how long it's going to take to get there. And what this does is, like in the case of my clients, say it's recovering from surgery, or, you know, when chemo ends, people think that they're just going to instantly feel better. And it's often, it can be up to a year or more for all of the impacts of chemotherapy to kind of get out of your system and leave you feeling. And some people never shake all of them off.
Mhm.
And so it's important to, when we're setting goals, we're setting expectations of where we want to be. And then, you know, in the case of my clientele and myself, we try to align our healing with the expectations. And really, we need to flip that script. We need to align our expectations with our healing. And that means starting with where we are right now, and creating a little acceptance around that, you know, that it's okay to be where we are.
Right.
As we start to move down the path.
Yeah. Something that people hear me say all the time is give yourself permission to be where you are.
Yep.
Just give yourself permission.
Exactly.
Because then you can adjust your expectations and be honest. And when you're honest with yourself, it's easier to be honest with others, and it's easier to set those boundaries and say what I'm going to do. I don't like to say what I could do or can do or can't do, because those are very powerless, limiting type of words. Like I choose not to do that because I choose to protect my energy today. Give yourself permission to just be where you're at. And I always believe that everybody is doing the very best they can in the moment with wherever they're at. Right? And in the moment, if the best you can do is take a nap, then take a nap. Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Be realistic. Don't make a to-do list, 16 things long if it's a day where you feel like you're dragging for whatever reason,
Yep.
I have, my clients just text me like, oh, I'm having this little thing happen today. And, and then my texts back are really about giving themselves permission to be where they're at, surrender.
Grace.
And
Yep.
there's so many beautiful things like that. So managing your expectations, that's number 2 of the plan. And then the third piece of this plan is, identifying what are the next steps, small rungs on the ladders that you can take given your values, your priorities, your budget, your time, your energy, and now your newly aligned expectations to where you're actually at, and this goal that really fits you and appeals to you and is tailored around your needs. So what is the smallest next step that you can take? Because that's where we find empowerment is in action. When we feel like we're doing something, and I know when we have a diagnosis or any other difficulty that's we've achieved it or we've had happen in our lives, that sometimes we feel powerless, like we don't even know where to go next, right? And when we don't know where to go next, we get paralyzed and we stay here. And when we're paralyzed and feeling like we don't know where to go, we don't know what to do, we're powerless, it's a terrible place to be. It's the land of hoping and waiting. And I spent decades there, so I know there's no worse place than to exist in the land of hoping and waiting. So we need to, in order to get into action, we've got to know what direction, and we've got to feel comfortable that the step is within something we can do and that we have the capacity to do, and that is in alignment and in the direction of that beautiful goal we just set for ourselves.
Absolutely. I think that, especially what you said about the land of hoping and waiting, so much of going through a cancer experience, a breast cancer experience, is hoping and waiting. It's also giving up control. It's also putting yourself in the hands of the medical team and other people. And they are the whole process. They are telling you where to go, what to do, when to be there, what to expect. And what often happens is when you get to the end of that, you're kind of set free, which should feel really exciting, but instead you're actually kind of dropped off a cliff. It's basically like, every week for the last however many months, sometimes a year or more, you've been told where to be, when to, what to do. And all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, great. Now you're done. We'll see you in 3 months. And that's why, being able to identify and take that very next step for you and how you're going to play a role is so important to my clients. It's that, it's walking everything back into simply one step at a time. What is the next step? And I can't love that short rung on the ladder concept enough. It really is. It is so true. So fantastic.
Yeah. So when you identify the next rung and you know it's not so big and it's aligned with the capacity and the values that you have right now, then you can do our step 3, which is to get into action, which is basically taking small steps in the direction of your goal that are in alignment with who you are, your values, your budget, your needs, etc., all the other things we talked about. And so we take small steps, but then what happens whenever we take steps, it's kind of like the game of getting warmer and getting colder. I talk about this with my clients all the time, right? We're getting feedback when we play that game when we're a little kid, right? Somebody hides the little, stuffed animal, and we walk into the room and we get into action. We take a step, we commit to going in a direction, but then when we get feedback, we correct our direction. Right. So if we get you're getting warmer, we keep going in that direction. If it says you're getting colder, that person says you're getting colder, we turn and we make a different direction. Now, adults are not very good at this in real life. We pick a direction, we stick with that. That's, you made your bed, now you got to lie in it, or all those other, cliches about that. And we don't listen. Right. And so part of that, like we have to get that feedback in order to be able to make a correction. So where does that feedback come from, right? Because we're evaluating along the way. So that feedback part of it comes from our own gut instincts. And I know we're being told what to do by a lot of well-meaning people and helpful people, but if your gut is saying hell no, that's the most important part to listen to. It really is. And so that's that feedback loop of you're getting warmer, you're getting colder. And then there's on the pragmatic things, right? Because sometimes things don't go according to our plan. We've made a plan, right? Now we're in action and they don't go according to plan. That doesn't mean that your goal was wrong. That just means there's something flawed in the execution. So this is where you can reflect and reevaluate, emulate what's working and release and let go of what's not, right?
Absolutely. I think that, curiosity is the key word for a lot of the work I do. It's about kind of deciding you're going to try something. I always say it's like the scientific method. You're going to set a hypothesis that if you do this, you're going to get this result. That's what you think is going to happen and why you're going to do it. And so then you put it into action and you do the thing. And then you have to stop and get curious and go, was I right? Did that work? Was that helpful? Did I like it? Is it something I want to keep doing? Or no way, that's out, that's just not beneficial to me. Or maybe it's modifying a version of that. Maybe it's slowing down a little bit, trying it in a different way. But it's all data, it's all information. And when we stop, we get curious. We're not looking at it with judgment. It's not about, did you succeed? Did you fail? It's just, like you said, did I get warmer or did I get colder? And where do we go from here? Do we keep going in the same direction, or do we need to adjust our path slightly, tweak things, so that we then can keep making progress?
Right.
And you're right. I think. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, and based on where you are now, right? Because you've just made some steps. Now, where are you? Right. So we're always looking at where am I now, and what's realistic right now. What can I do from here? So that's really huge.
That's right.
So yeah,
that's exactly why why my business is named As We Are Now, because everything that we go through, and this is obviously anything in life, it's who are we, where are we, and how do we feel ourselves as we are now. And we're always changing, we're always evolving. And I think so often we resist that change. We look at ourselves as static beings, and we are not. From moment to moment, day to day, we are evolving to where we are in any given space and time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The final part about getting into action is really about getting support. So, if there's anything I've learned in life is it does take a village, and you don't have to go at it. You don't have to be alone. The people that I work with are smart, high achievers, and they're like, I'm smart. I can do this. I can figure it out. They want to figure it out for themselves. They don't want to be told what to do or have to hire a coach in order to achieve their goals. So that's so because they're you know, what I call conscious expanders, people who want to grow and learn in a 360-degree way on purpose, deliberately, all the time, because it's like nectar and it lights us up, right? For people like this, we want to learn. We want to add to our own toolbox. We don't want someone to fix it for us. We want to fix it. I'll do it. I can fix this. I'm smart. I'll figure it out. So I provide, resources that are within budget, free and within a lower budget that, that are helpful to people, in case it's not right for them at this time to engage in a coaching arrangement with me. And I know that you do too, as well. So, getting support.
I do.
Resources. There's so many around. Why don't you share with us some of the resources that you offer?
Absolutely. So obviously I have paid services, and I have other, low cost and free services. But that's what you said, equipping my clients with information, education, tools, and resources that they can carry forward and use for themselves. Someone can go out and Google how to, what the lymphatic system is all about, and they can try and Google how to, say, use dry brushing as a self-care tool. But the problem is a lot of those things, again, are so generic. So for my clientele, being able to walk someone through how they can use dry brushing specific to their needs, given what they've been through, for example, that risk of lymphedema, how it's relevant to a woman who's been through breast cancer. And so one of the main things I do, because people often don't know where to start, or we talked about identifying that next step. And for so many women who are either in treatment, newly diagnosed, or even after, they just don't know what their next step is. So one of the main things I offer is I do a free, what I call a next step clarity call. It's a 30-minute no pressure call. We get on, we chat, we talk about where you are now, what your needs are, where you want to get to. And then really it's about identifying that next step. And it could be working with me through something I offer. It could be something else entirely unrelated, but it's just helping you, figure out what is that next step, and how can you use self-care strategically to work through recovery and survivorship, achieve those goals that you're setting for yourself.
Right. Yes. And that's beautiful. And I know I will put the links to how someone can sign up for one of those calls, whether it's someone listening to this or someone who's listening knows, a resource they can share. Right. And I also offer something very, very similar, and in which, the resources and your best next steps, or what it takes to make those small, what that next step on the ladder, or next couple steps that you can do yourself. When you're in overwhelm, when you've got a lot going on in your life, you've been through a big, giant change, the last thing you have time to do is do all that research, because you'll go down rabbit holes, you'll waste time, you'll be overwhelmed. So it's like, let the experts like you and me, find the right resources for you and deliver them to you. And that's what our calls do too. So we're listening, and we're like, okay, here's what you can do next. And here's some resources within your values, your budget, right? All in alignment that you can use to move forward and help yourself, as well. So that's the beauty of both of our calls. So awesome. So Amy, thank you so much for being on Conversations Worth Your While. I really appreciate it. I will put your contact information into the description of this video. And once again, I'm Linda Bucher, helping you to lighten your load, unleash the bigness inside of you, and make an impact while living a balanced, rewarding life. So once again, thank you, Amy, as we are now. That's a little bit of a mouthful. And thank you, our audience, for sharing your time with us today. So please subscribe, and remember to check the description, where you'll find our contact information and the free tools and resources that we are gifting to you. And until next time, make sure that you've made this conversation worth your while by fueling the spark that it ignited.